So you've landed on a website. This firm, the one that you're looking at the website for, they came highly recommended. A friend of yours said, "Oh my goodness, this organization is going to be absolutely perfect for you. They're going to solve exactly what your problem is." But it's kind of off, right? You're looking at it and you're not really feeling it. So why does that sometimes happen? Well, we're going to talk about one of the reasons why that sometimes happen, and it's persona marketing. They are probably promoting a persona that is not exactly you. So we're going to talk about today what persona marketing is and why it matters to you. My name is Erica Dickstein, and I'm here with my fabulous colleague Laura Mayer
Oh, hello. Thank you.
to chat about persona marketing.
Yeah. Hi. Well, I think, we should probably get started. Like, what is a persona? What do we mean by that exactly? Right. And I think all too often when we sit down with our subject matter experts and we start talking about planning their website, they're so excited. They know so much. They're subject matter experts on whatever their business or organization is all about. And they fail to think about the novice users, the people that do not have the depth and breadth of their knowledge coming to their website, and how do we present information to them in a way that they can ingest it and encourage them to go through the site as we want them to. So that's where creating these personas are. It is setting down and talk. It's a way to segment your users into specific groups so that you can align your content strategy accordingly. It's a way of thinking about who your users are and not who your subject matters are that work there, and it's a very deep dive into what motivates them, how they best ingest information, and how we best present information to them to guide them to the ultimate action we want them to take. Would you agree with that? What would you add?
Yeah, I think that's a great answer up here. Let's give an example, right? Because I think that's where it's really easy, instead of talking about it, to sort of really understand it. I was talking to somebody recently from actually my local chamber of commerce, and we were talking about, who are the variety of groups that they had. They had businesses who have been members for almost the entire existence, right, of the 100 years that this chamber has been open, right? They've always been a member. They're always going to show up. They're always going to, sponsor, right? These are people who just week in, week out, they are members, right? They understand what the mission is, et cetera, et cetera. Then there might be brand new members. They're younger companies. They certainly aren't as familiar with the chamber, and it hasn't been established for them what the value of the chamber is quite yet. So that might be a different persona or segment, right? And then there might be people who aren't even yet members. They're kind of sniffing around, like looking. They're trying to get that value established, right? So there's three personas right there. Now, and if you think about it, the company, the one that has been a member since it's been founded, they need very different communications. They need a very different approach than the organization, than maybe these people who are in their first or second year. And
Yeah.
so that's why you create personas, because if you're just thinking of our membership and coming up with an approach for our membership, you're going to treat these two exactly the same. They're very different.
Right. Yeah. I think, a recent project we did with a medical startup company was very interesting, and I think a great example of that too. They have three very distinct persona groups. They have the investors that they're coming to the website and they need a
Mhm.
certain information and they follow a certain path. They have the providers that they're hoping will use their product and write prescriptions for their product. So that's certainly a different amount of information they need and research they need to know and that sort of stuff. And then you have your third group, which is the general public that's maybe coming to find out a solution to their medical concern through this product that they were offering. So I think it's very valuable work that's often overlooked in the beginning of a project because people are so excited to get in and start building. But it's a major foundational piece, much like a brand guide with well documented user personas and a well documented brand guide. You've got the foundation to really start off strongly in the digital marketing realm.
That's absolutely true. And one thing that I think is super interesting about persona marketing is just like you mentioned the brand guidelines, just like the brand guidelines, it is something that is essential for your marketing pieces. I mentioned, emails, all those communication pieces. But what we're actually talking about today is its impact on websites, because we could spend so much time on personas in general.
Yeah.
But actually, we're really talking about websites. So, Laura, let's talk about how this helps you create a more strategic website.
Yeah. Well, I think off the bat, it helps remove that filter that our subject matter experts have on when they're trying to come up with what they think should be on the website and the order it should be in. It gives, by documenting your user personas, you're very clearly being able to ask, if we want to include this piece of information, if we want our sitemap to go this certain way, is that aligning with how our persona would want to find that information versus our subject matter experts? So it really helps with the navigation and structure from that piece, and definitely the messaging tone as well, right? If your user is a very professional person with a certain kind of demeanor, you want to make sure you're using that language and that imagery and everything is presented to them in that way. If you are working with very casual users, or maybe it's a less formal environment, you want to speak to them in that way too. So I think that's also important. And thirdly, calls to action. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, Erica, and why that's important for those CTAs.
Yeah, there's a few different places. I'm going to expand your answer a little bit and say, absolutely calls to action. So what are you offering, right? But in addition to that, the navigation and the structure, knowing that you have different audiences, you might actually even create navigational structure around that. Think about a college who might have different pages for undergraduate students and graduate students, or
alumni, parents, donors.
Alumni, parents, exactly. They have so many different personas that they're, and so that is integrated into that navigation and structure. And as you said, messaging and tone, making sure that you're really creating that. And I think what's so interesting about this is, as I hear us talking about it, right, it seems obvious. Well, of course we're doing persona marketing. Well, of course we are, because, yes, we recognize that we have these different audiences, but it's true persona marketing isn't just recognizing that you have audiences. It is truly giving thought and structure to those audiences before you, and identifying them and really fleshing them out before you start. So let's talk, Laura, about how to create a meaningful persona. So it's not just, well, yeah, alumni are going to come, right? So we need an alumni section, but creating personas around who your alumni are.
Yeah, I think, well, it's very important to sit and just discuss it around the table with your subject matter experts. That's important and valuable too. But what's really key is like digging in and doing the workings, right? You need to have client interviews and surveys so that have meaningful, thoughtful questions that get to the bottom of what you're trying to ask. That's important. You want to look at site analytics. That's definitely important. You want to know where's your traffic coming from? Where is it going? Other pages they're interested in, how long they're on those pages. That gives you valuable information as well. Also, don't overlook AI, right? AI is our friend. It can analyze all sorts of things for us and tell us more about our users, what they like, what they don't like. And certainly it's helpful with developing tone and voice that we use with our clients. And what I think is absolutely key and important is you absolutely have to document this out, right? You have to build it out, give those personas names. They're real living people when you're talking about them with your marketing department and your digital marketing goals, your website build, your website team, so that they're a real entity in your head. It's not just something kind of fuzzy that you work towards, that you actually have data and information to back up that persona that you're building.
Yeah. And one of the ways that I've thought about doing this is, you know, even if you're a smaller company and you're like, wait a minute, I can't do client interviews and surveys, any organization of any size can do this. If you're smaller, just certainly it will be the case that you have somebody in your mind when you think, okay, who embodies the characteristics of like who I want to attract, who this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That can be your persona, a real person or a fictional person who you created based on that real person absolutely can be your persona, right? And then building out based on that. The other thing that I would add is you really want to make sure that your persona isn't a static document, just like your brand guidelines, right? It shouldn't be something that is created for you and then sits in a back file. It's something that that you work with, that you check before you write things. One of the most interesting exercises that I've ever done, and it's been a little while now, and I'm actually embarrassed to say this, but I thought it was fascinating. Once you create a persona, write a paragraph or two of content in their voice. So this is my persona, and let me talk about the problems that I'm having. We did this exercise actually with an elder care organization that we did, and they wrote out an absolutely beautiful couple paragraphs about, their mother needed a little bit more assistance, and the concern and the fear that went into that, wanting to make sure that they do right by this person. And it truly, like, by having that, anytime you start to write content, you can go back and sort of be in that moment of this person, of how you're going to create content. It's so powerful.
Yeah, I think, and maybe this is another chat we do sometime, Erica, but what you do when your user personas grow up or change or evolve, and why it's so important that you always go back and every so often give those personas a look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, as always, Laura, this has been incredibly enlightening. And for those of you who are watching, actually, we have created at Spring Insight a Persona Toolkit. So if this is something that is interesting to you, in the down below have the URL that you can go and get this toolkit so that you can start to create this for your organization. Will absolutely get you started on this journey for creating the toolkits. But in the meantime, please like this video or provide a comment if you've gotten something out of it. And also do please subscribe. We put out content regularly just like this, where we talk about things that you subject matter experts need to know in the marketplace. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Erica.
Awesome.